My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
A very good morning. You're watching The Briefing here on GB News. It is 9 a.m. Coming up in the next hour, we'll be replaying that exclusive interview between Nigel Farage and the former US President Donald Trump. You will not want to miss that. But before we do, let's get the very latest news at the top of the hour.
I'm Rhiannon Jones. This is your news at 9 o'clock. A new COVID antibody treatment has been approved for use in the UK. Clinical trials found Xevudy cut hospital admissions and deaths by 79% in those at risk of developing severe disease. GlaxoSmithKline says it works against the new Omicron variant. The government has also secured 114 million jabs for potential booster campaigns over the next 2 years. Kingston Mills, a professor of experimental immunology at Trinity College Dublin, told GB News that booster jabs should help the fight against the new variant. Scientists believe they've found the trigger that causes rare blood clots after the Oxford-AstraZeneca vaccine. An international team from Cardiff and the US thinks it now understands how the vaccine can sometimes cause a chain reaction in the immune system. It's hoped the findings will help prevent and treat blood clots in the future. France has accused Boris Johnson of starting the row over migrants. That's after President Emmanuel Macron reportedly described the Prime Minister as a clown and knucklehead as tensions ran high over the crisis in the Channel. Senior government sources say despite the comments, Mr Johnson continues to be a staunch advocate of the UK-France relationship. French politician Bruno Bonnell told GB News the Prime Minister has only himself to blame for the international spat.
Publicizing a negotiation letter that should be underground and that should really remain behind curtains before we have an agreement was not something really nice to do, and not really smart, by the way, to do. So I think that in terms of rudeness, I would say that at this stage of the tension, I wouldn't point one or the other. I would just say that people are protecting their own interest.
Here we are with 27 totally unnecessary deaths. All Frontex can do is send one aeroplane. All the French president can do is sling insults at the Prime Minister. This is just really, really ridiculous. We should be trying to solve the problem, not insult each other.
Voters are heading to the polls in the Old Bexley and Sidcup by-election. 11 candidates are contesting the seat, which has been a Tory stronghold for decades. It was triggered after the death of former Cabinet Minister James Brokenshire in October. The Ministry of Defence has set a new target for female recruits, aiming to more than double the number by 2030. It follows a landmark inquiry into the treatment of women in the armed services. It found that 64% of veterans and 58% of those still serving experienced bullying, harassment and discrimination during their careers. The government says the inquiry shows that the MOD has failed women on too many occasions.
It absolutely makes sense that there is a push more to recruit more female, get more female recruits in with all the skills that they bring. I mean, there's been various reviews recently about the way that, diversity and various other issues are tackled. And I think the three services, all of them, are taking this pretty seriously right now to make sure that it is a great place for female recruits to have a long and lasting and fulfilling career.
And some of the UK's biggest names have taken part in a short film highlighting the impact of homelessness at Christmas.
12 sirens screaming.
Celebrities including Chris Martin, Ellie Goulding and Emma Thompson have lent their voices to an appeal for the charity crisis. 12 Days of Christmas has been changed to describe the experiences of homeless people over the festive period. I'll be back with the headlines in half an hour, but for now it's back to Darren and the briefing.
Yeah, very good morning. Welcome to the programme. I'm Darren McGaffey, standing in for Tom Harwood. It is just after 9 a.m. and in a world-exclusive interview for GBNews, which aired last night, the former US President Donald Trump sat down with Nigel Farage, discussed that 2020 election, the Capitol Hill riots and the state of America now. Here's your chance to watch again Farage, the Trump interview.
From the moment in 2015 when he announced he was going to run to become US President, Donald Trump has been in world news. He's dominated world news. Every day for 5 years, all over the world, it was Donald Trump has said this. Donald Trump is alleged to have said that, and what other people said about him. Yet something very odd has happened. Since the beginning of this year, outside the United States, he's virtually disappeared. Has he been silenced? Is it voluntary? What is going on? Well, today, we're going to find out. We're going to break that. And the first big foreign interview that Donald Trump has done, this is Trump Speaks to the World with me, Nigel Farage, here on GB News. Good to see you.
Well, I didn't know I was so quiet, but if you say so, that's okay with me.
Yeah, and I wonder, is that because of social media to a very, very large extent?
I don't know. I mean, I have not heard that, but it's possibly so. I have a lot of things to say, and sometimes I want to say them, and sometimes I don't feel it's appropriate to say them based on the position. We had a great election. We ended up, it was a rigged election, unfortunately. We got more votes than any sitting president in history by far, 75 million votes, more than 12 million that we had from the previous election, which was about 63 million votes. I think we've said a lot about a lot of things, and certainly there's a lot to talk about. If you look at what's going on in Afghanistan with the withdrawal, which was, I think, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, and you look at our borders, what's happening with our borders, you look at the cost of energy, we were energy independent, and we no longer are. You look at so many different things. You and I could talk all day.
Yeah.
And it's a shame what's happened to the United States.
But we've not heard you through, I guess, through Twitter. It was for you, something that you used to massive effect. Oh, Jack Dorsey is being removed as CEO of Twitter because of shareholder pressure, but whether that means they'll improve as a channel or not. I mean, I was amazed the day that the Taliban, you mentioned Afghanistan a moment ago, the day the Taliban took over Kabul, I did put out a message that said it seemed ridiculous that their leadership was still active on Twitter. and yet you were still banned.
Well, they were wrong in what they did, and we're dealing with the United States president, who's obviously a popular president based on everything that you see, and them and Facebook, and I think they made a big mistake. I think if they had it to do over again, they wouldn't be doing it. We get the voice out. We have to do it. We have an obligation to do that. But he's leaving. I guess it was probably enforced because they're down. And also, there's no excitement on Twitter anymore, as I understand. There used to be a lot of excitement. Not only me, conservative people are leaving and being canceled. So they're canceled, they're leaving. And in my case, we used to get tremendous interaction with liberals and everybody else. And now they just say it's a very boring place to be, Twitter, and it's going down. The numbers are going way down.
No, they are. On the election, as you say, you got 11 million votes more than you got in 2016, because we know what happened. 29th of February last year, I was with you backstage at CPAC, and I thought he's going to win 40 states. I mean, things were looking terrific. The pandemic hit. And then you kind of got criticised from both sides. Biden said you were xenophobic because you closed the borders. You said we don't want foreign air travel. We don't want this virus being brought in. The other side said you didn't lock down hard enough. I mean, difficult in a pandemic to win as a president, as a leader. But the real effect, of course, was, for the first time ever in America, tens of millions of ballots being sent out through the mail system.
Well, they use COVID, or the China virus, as I call it, to rob and rig and steal an election. And they sent out millions and millions of ballots. Nobody knows where they went in so many cases, and it was a disgrace. And everybody knows it. You look at even polls now, a big percentage of our country knows it, and it's very bad for democracy. Very, very bad for democracy.
The problem was in so many of these states, because they'd never seen it before, kind of what they did in collecting the votes wasn't against the law, and that was part of the problem.
Well, but they didn't get it approved in many cases by legislatures, and you have to, so therefore it is against the law. Wasn't approved by state legislatures. You can't do it even through a court. You can't do it. It has to go through the legislature, and the legislatures didn't approve this stuff, and the courts didn't have the courage to take it up. And so it's an interesting situation, but we'll see how it all ends out.
I mean, a lot of Americans, as you rightly say, a lot of Americans are genuinely concerned about election integrity. And I have to tell you, from my experience back in the UK, mass postal voting, leads to the wrong results very often.
Absolutely. Automatically, by the way.
It's a bad system.
They cheat.
It's
automatic.
System.
I mean, they put everybody on, there millions of people on the honor system. No, there's tremendous cheating with that. And they've done studies on it. Everybody knows it. Every study comes out, you can't do it through the mail. You can't do it. These mail-in ballots are, whether it's your country, whether it's the USA, it's an open invitation to cheat.
But here's the problem. I've seen some pretty extensive private polling that suggests that up to 20% of your potential voters and supporters feel so demotivated by the message that it's been rigged, that it's not fair, that it's not just, that in Georgia, for example, in that special election, which was the one that tipped the balance in the Senate, there were a number that perhaps didn't go out to vote who would have done because they felt disgusted with the whole system.
Well, they felt the election was rigged, the preceding election, which was the presidential election, and then when they had to vote a couple of months later, they really did lose their enthusiasm, and frankly, rightfully so. They had the governor of Georgia did a terrible job, just terrible, having to do with election integrity, and they felt an election was rigged and stolen, and I would say they didn't have the enthusiasm to go out and vote, and I understand that. Now, one other thing, Mitch McConnell did a terrible job, because this guy's talking about $600 giving during this troubled time, giving, and they're talking about $2,000. You don't win elections that way. Now, right or wrong, you just don't win elections that way. So Mitch McConnell was a disaster, and I think that really they did get a lot of votes, but a lot of people were discouraged. There's no question about it.
Yeah, I'm sure of that. So looking ahead, from here, is the message to look back at November 2020 and to condemn and criticize much of what happened? Or is the message to look forward and try and make sure that weakness in the system can't exist again?
I think it's both. I think it has to be both. We have a base in Alabama, as an example, had 69,000 people recently show up. wherever I go, I think I'm getting bigger crowds now at the rallies, and you know the rallies because you've been to plenty of them. I have the biggest crowds I've ever had. And I think it has to be both, because if you don't study what took place and do something about it, if possible, I think they're going to do something about it. I don't view that as a foregone conclusion. If you don't look back, you really can't look to the future. But I think it's really a combination of both, and very strong to the future, but also it's very strong looking back. People don't want that to happen again.
No, and voter ID. I mean, for example,
voter ID is very
there's an overwhelming majority, and it's not just Republican voters, of Democrat voters who think voter ID makes sense and we've got to have free and fair
If we didn't
elections.
have as an example, if we didn't have what happened in 2020, all of these legislatures and all of these people that are meeting and passing voter ID now would have never happened. So, looking back is okay. You have to look both ways, but you can't forget about what happened. And if you did, you wouldn't have all of the things that are happening now happen. And there's some very exciting things, but one of the big things is voter ID. And you have to stop the mail-in voting. The mail-in voting is just ripe for fraud, and that's what it was.
Well, I'm keen to look ahead with this conversation. One last point about the past. 6th of January, which is something that your opponents gleefully seized upon, particularly, the social media giants on the West Coast and everybody else. And I know that you were willfully misquoted in terms of what you'd said that day. Because
in many different ways.
No, you were saying go in peace, and I understand that, and I get that. Looking back on the 6th of January, was it a mistake to have had that rally on that day? Or?
Well, I didn't have, there was a rally that was there, and if you look, it was a massive rally with hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. I think it was the largest crowd I've ever spoken before. And and I reverse it. The insurrection took place on November 3rd. That was Election Day. And before and after. That was, to me, the insurrection. And the January 6th was a protest. But if you would have looked at the crowds, the size, nobody wants to talk about that. I believe it was the biggest, and most people, and I've spoken to very big crowds. I have never spoken in front of a crowd that size. Nobody ever talks about that. And then, unfortunately, some bad things happened, but also the other side had some very bad things happen. And add this, I offered 10,000 and suggested 10,000 National Guardsmen. We want the National Guard to be there, 10,000, or even the military, because I knew the crowd was going to be massive, because I knew the anger that took place over the election being rigged, and I understood that. I understood it better than anybody. And Pelosi and these people turned it down. We would have had tremendous security, but they turned it down.
And that would have stopped people going into the Capitol.
It would have stopped any problem. Absolutely. They turned it down. Also, as you know, the police, I guess they say, were not given proper instructions by Capitol Hill, which is Pelosi. They were given some very bad instructions. So if you look at what happened and go back and really study it, they were so angered and so upset. And so, people crying. They were so angered by it. Now, if you lost the election, people don't act that way. But they knew that we won the election, and they went there. But to me, the real insurrection, if you look at it, took place on Election Day.
Now, either way, we've got Biden and Harris in office, and they've got plummeting poll ratings, and we've got a border crisis, as you quite rightly said, law and order, the Black Lives Matter movement, which is now becoming increasingly, I think, political, don't you?
It's shocking that it started off, with pigs in a blanket, right? You know that, right?
Yeah.
You know the expression, fry them like bacon. And that was about our police, our great police. And all of a sudden this becomes mainstream? I don't really think so. And Antifa, bad, very bad. And they had Antifa in that rally. They had Antifa leading a lot of people on that day on January. And I will say that it's pretty incredible that nothing happens to them, but the other side, this has been going on for many years.
So they're not just about racial equality then?
Well, I think they're about politics, but I think they're about a lot of other things. If you go back to their original founding and what they were saying, kill the police. What they're saying is kill the police.
I know.
And that becomes mainstream. Not good.
No, not good. We've seen specimens of it, of course, over in the UK, and we've seen Churchill's statue defaced and all of these things.
Well, you saw Churchill's beautiful bust being removed from the White House. When I got there, I said, send it back. They called, would you like to have the bust of Winston Churchill, a great one, right?
Yep.
Even you would say that,
Yeah,
Nigel.
absolutely.
And I said, I absolutely want it. Explain. And as you know, President Obama, I believe, sent it back. He didn't want it. And I said, let's bring it back.
No, well, Joe Biden got rid of it on the first day. Which
did he? Oh,
yeah.
no.
Which is why, of
Not
course,
surprised.
there's been no advancement with trade deals and all the rest
I
of it.
mean, why would you do that with Winston Churchill and you're trying to get along with your country and you send, it's such a token, but such an important token. No, I had it back for my entire time. It was there. I looked. He was a very handsome man.
He's a very brave man, too. But Biden, G7, Biden turns up at the G7, and this was before he let everybody down in Afghanistan, and which leaves us wondering, where is America in the world now? I mean, we've got big threats, haven't we? We've got a lot of Russian troops on the Ukrainian border.
Yep.
We've got China, ever more bellicose in their statements about Taiwan. We've got Iran. I mean, can you believe it? Negotiations are going on this week with Iran, and the Israelis are very, very scared. Where is America in the world right now?
I think it's at the lowest point it's ever been at. I don't think it's ever been in a position like this. We're not respected anymore. I will tell you, there were no planes flying over Taiwan. And the name wasn't even mentioned. You didn't talk about Taiwan when I was president. It wasn't going to happen, what they're doing now. And they'll wait till after the Olympics, I assume, and perhaps something will happen. But it's not good if you're there and you have bombers flying over your country constantly, which is constant. With Russia, we had no problem. I had no problem with, you didn't mention North Korea, Kim Jong-un.
No, when you crossed the line and
I got along with him great. I got along with him almost as well as I
Little
could.
Rocket Man, you called him.
I did, but then we became very friendly, like you, sort of like you.
He forgave you.
But you know, the truth, we didn't have a problem, and now you've got a problem with them too. You didn't mention that one, and honestly, that's a big problem because he does have serious nuclear power, and many other things. If you take a look at energy independence, we were energy independent, first time ever, and now we are going and begging for oil. We're going back begging for oil. We go to Saudi Arabia, we go to Russia, OPEC. We go and say, please give us oil. We had so much oil, we didn't know what to do with it. A gallon of gasoline was $1.87 when I left. Now it's going to be $7.50 in California.
Yeah.
And the big thing is going to be inflation, because the inflation, and it's hitting you too. It hits everybody now.
Yeah.
But the inflation is at a level maybe that we haven't seen for, I guess, 40, 50 years.
40 years.
It's a big problem.
That was Donald Trump speaking to Nigel Farage. Just to be clear, unless you weren't clear, of course, his claims about vote rigging in the United States have been entirely proven to be false. It is the reason that Joe Biden is in the White House and not Donald Trump. But we're going to see a bit more of that interview in just a couple of minutes. Nigel Farage carrying on with part 2 in Mar-a-Lago, so do not miss that. But before we do, let's get the weather on this Thursday morning. And my word, it's pretty cold out, isn't it?
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Good morning. It's cold and frosty out there and icy in places as well. And overnight we've seen some sleet and snow. That should be fading away over the next few hours. And for most it's going to be a fine and sunny day. But look at the isobars. Follow them all the way up to the north. That's where our air is coming from. That's why it is so cold out there. And these two little weather fronts have been providing more showers through the night and still providing a bit of sleet and snow for Wales, southwest England and down the eastern side of England as well, and across northeast Scotland. So, as I said, it could be quite icy out there this morning. Just bear that in mind. The showers do tend to fade as we go through the day. We'll keep one or two close to the east coast of England and northern Scotland, but for many it's a dry and bright day with quite a bit of sunshine, and those winds will be easing down, not as strong or as bitter as yesterday, but it's still going to be cold, 3 or 4 degrees at best for most of us.
Quite quickly this evening, we'll see a frost reforming as the cold air sits in place, but then we start to see wet weather coming into Northern Ireland and across Scotland. Hitting the cold air, that could provide some snow to lower levels for a time across Scotland, but even also further south, Northern England, East Wales, the Midlands could see an hour or two of snow, and that works its way towards eastern England first thing in the morning. These are the minimum temperatures, but actually, as we go towards dawn, those temperatures will start to rise. So although we could see snow for a time, it'll soon turn back to rain. So it's mostly a wet start across the south. As I say, we could see a few flakes of snow across East Anglia and the southeast for a time tomorrow morning. But turning back quickly to rain, that area of rain clears, but it looks like we'll see further rain coming into the southwest as the day goes on. Quite a grey day then for England and Wales, but brighter skies further north tomorrow. Quite a bit of sunshine, just a few showers across the far northwest. Temperatures here 7-8 degrees, but in the south it's going to be milder again tomorrow. We're back up to double digits. Goodbye.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Very welcome back to the briefing on this Thursday morning. Now, Donald Trump has accused Boris Johnson of making a big mistake by backing wind power in the UK. He described some of the wind farms as eyesores. The former president also attacked Prince Harry and Meghan Markle as he opened up about his relationship with the Queen. That's all in the second part of his interview with Nigel Farage. Let's have a look at part two.
The strange thing is, Boris Johnson, and you've always been very generous about Boris Johnson, and you wanted to see the agony of Brexit not being completed. Well, we wanted to see that got over the line, and it was. And yet Boris Johnson seems to have bonded with Joe Biden over wind energy, over net zero, over COP26 in the most extraordinary way. What do you make of these promises for net zero?
Well, I think it's ridiculous. And I think wind is a horrible thing for Scotland. And I got to see it because I own great properties in Scotland and Ireland. And I look at these magnificent fields with these horrible windmills all over them. And windmills is a nice term, I guess turbines. And they're starting to rust because once they're there for a couple of years, they start to rust and wear out and look terrible, look even worse. And I'm looking at it, and you know, you're talking about a place that really has a lot of energy in so many different ways. You have a lot of hydro, but you have a lot of energy. And when I look at all of these things that need subsidy, because they don't work without subsidy, they need subsidy. And what so many countries, not just your country, not just UK, it's all over the place. You fly over, I'm saying, what a shame what they've done. Well, and you know that environmentalists are liking this stuff. I think they hate the world.
Boris says we're going to be the Saudi Arabia of wind, which is well and good when the wind blows.
I think it's a shame. I think it's a shame. I'm in Aberdeen. They built this ugly wind farm in the ocean. It's so disgusting to look at it. It's a shame. I built one of the most beautiful, one of the greatest golf courses. It's been so reviewed in the world. And now you look at, you know, not very far off. You know, when these things are 20 and 30 stories tall, they're monsters. They can be far out, and they're not far out. They're right on top of you. No, I think it's a shame what's happened in Scotland, in UK, all over the place. You take a look. I think Ireland's been better about it. If you want to know the truth, they've been tougher. And other countries are getting tougher. But wind is the most expensive form of energy. And remember, every 10 years, you have to replace those monsters. And a lot of times they don't bother. You know what they do? They just let them rot. They kill all the birds.
No, but Boris
is so bad.
But Boris is he's hooked
he's
on
wrong.
this.
Boris is wrong. If he's going heavy into wind, I mean, you're telling me, but if he's going heavy into wind,
he is.
He's wrong. He's making a big mistake.
He is. You've always been nice about him, but he's.
No, I like him. I like him. I get along with him. I've always gotten along with him. He's gone a little bit on the more liberal side. But I'll tell you, with energy, I'm surprised that he would allow that to happen, because you have one of the most beautiful countries in the world, and you're destroying it with all these wind turbines all over the place.
Yeah, well,
and you don't need them.
I have to say, I'm not a great fan of them. And net zero, what does net zero mean? I mean, you know, if the Biden administration, if the Democrats were to stay in for the next 20 or 30 years, what would that mean for the American
economy? I think
economy?
the carbon taxes that they want to put on countries and people and companies, I think it's ridiculous. And look, we have, in our case, liquid gold. They're taking it away from us by not letting us use it. It's liquid gold. And natural gas is very clean. It works out very well. But you have clean coal even. But we have resources in the U.S. that are incredible. And the enemy is making us feel badly about it and taking it away, putting our companies at a big disadvantage. We were at a position the likes of which we've never seen just a year ago, and now people can't get gasoline for their car, or if they do, they have to pay so much. It's very sad. Now, in your country, which I do know something about, I own Turnberry, I own great properties in your country. Yeah. I mean, just great properties. I love it. I love your people. I love everything about it. I got along great with Boris, but I see what they're doing, and I think they're making a tremendous mistake.
You also got on well with the Queen. You really enjoyed it. You really enjoyed that, didn't you?
I think she's a fantastic woman. She is a fantastic woman. I was supposed to spend like a half an hour with her. I ended up being there for much more than an hour, and everyone said, "Oh, that's so rude." But I said, "No, but she liked it, and I liked it. I'm not going to be rude." And we had a great time together. We then had an evening, the likes of which you rarely would see. And I think she was laughing and smiling. We got along great. We talked the whole night. She is a great, wonderful woman.
Yeah, well, she's been there nearly 70 years now on the throne.
Yeah,
it's incredible. And she's still head of state in Canada or Australia. I mean, it's unbelievable.
And respected by everyone.
Yeah.
And no scandal, no anything. Think of it. She's done this for more than 70 years. And she's never had scandal about herself.
No.
No scandal, no anything. She's an incredible woman.
No, and she's had a very tough year. You know, she lost her husband this year.
Tough year.
You know, they were married over 70 years, and she's been ill. She's, you know, had to withdraw from one or two public engagements.
Hopefully not very ill, though. I've been watching it closely because I love her. I think she's great. You know, my mother was born in Scotland. My mother she came over here at about 19 years old, met my father. They were married for many, many years. They were married, they had a great marriage. But she left Scotland. She'd go back once a year religiously, but she was really somebody that respected the Queen. She loved the Queen. Anything with the Queen. When they were doing anything ceremonial, as an example, she'd be glued to the television. But she had great respect and love for the Queen.
Well, and hundreds of millions around the world respect this woman.
True.
I mean, in the most astonishing way. And I know your enthusiasm for it. Yet her son, Charles, who would be the natural successor, and you had a meeting with Charles, and it was reported by one of your former press secretaries that you were somewhat bored by the meeting.
That I was?
Yeah.
No, I wasn't bored. I liked Charles. I thought he was great. No, he's an environmentalist. He talked about the environment most of the meeting, which was fine. I mean, I understood that was the purpose of the meeting, and he was telling me his views. I was not bored at all. No, I think Charles is a wonderful person.
Okay. Now, somebody you may not think is quite as wonderful is a recent British export to America. And I think we're kind of quite pleased to have got rid of him, really, is Prince Harry, of course.
Yeah.
And Meghan living over here, being not only disobliging about you at every given opportunity, but actually the entirety of the Conservative movement. And now we hear that she's ringing up senators, ringing up members of Congress, lobbying for law changes, and doing some of this on headed paper that says the Duchess of Sussex. And we saw the Oprah Winfrey interview, and it turned out later a lot of what she said simply just wasn't true.
Yeah.
Should she go into American politics?
I'm not a fan of hers. I wasn't from day one. I think Harry has been used horribly. I think someday he will regret it. You know, a lot of people are saying I'm very good at the prediction business. I think someday he will regret it. He probably does already. But I'm not a fan of hers at all. And I think she's very disrespectful to the Queen that we just spoke about, who's such a great woman, who's such a great person, historic person. I think she's very disrespectful to the royal family, but maybe most importantly to the Queen. And I just, from day one, I never got it. I never got it. I see her, I listen to her. She's trying to do things that I think are inappropriate, very inappropriate. But I think Harry's been used and been used terribly. It's ruined his relationship with his family.
Completely.
And it's really, really, I think it hurts the Queen.
Yeah, and you can't use a royal title and get involved in
Well, I didn't know
American
she was
affairs.
doing that, but
Well, no, she has been doing it.
It's not appropriate.
Let's finish off back here in America. Big victory. Youngkin, big victory the other week. Virginia, you know, he won that race, won it very, very comfortably to be the governor. And what was interesting, I thought, was he was actually getting votes in Northern Virginia. And he was getting votes very much on just ordinary parents living in suburbia that don't want their kids taught critical race theory.
That's true. They're not believers.
Don't want their kids to be told America's rubbish.
Right.
You know? You did well with your base. Phenomenal. I've never seen support like it. You did well with the black community.
And by the way, Youngkin, who's a very good man, did very well with my base. And I did a tele-town hall call, had massive numbers of people on that call get out and vote. And my base got out and voted for him. And that was a great victory for the Republican Party. And we have many other great victories that night. You know, we swept the land. We had tremendous success.
They were big results.
It's really great. Things are happening. Things are happening.
You got the black vote up significantly for the Republicans. That was a big achievement.
I did.
You had a problem in suburbia. Suburban voters were a bit reluctant. Maybe they found...
See, I don't believe that. I think I did very well there. And the other thing, I did great with Hispanics. You know, the Hispanic vote, for me, is legendary, the numbers. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. A report came out literally an hour ago talking about how well I've done with the Hispanic vote. A number that nobody's ever had before as a Republican. A number that's really game-changing. It's a you know, they're great people.
Yeah, and yet they, of course, who've come legally to America.
That's right.
Just as we have a border crisis, we've got these little boats crossing the English Channel.
Yeah, right.
You've got the southern border crisis. I was down in Arizona in May looking at it. I couldn't believe the scale of it. How big a political issue? Because in the UK, our border issue is becoming the #1 political issue. How big is it here?
So I got elected in 2016 because of the border and other things. And in 2020, I didn't talk about the border. You know why? Because I did such a good job, it was no longer an issue. But still, I got many more votes. So, you know, I guess it wasn't as important. Now it's the biggest issue again.
Yeah.
But now it's worse than it ever was in the history of our country. We never had a problem like we have now with the border. I did the best job. We had the best border situation in the history of our country, just like I created the best economy in the history of our country. But we had the best border, and now we have, a year later, the worst border. Millions of people are coming in unvetted, unchecked. It's a disgrace what's happened. It's a very big issue.
Yeah, well, it is for us too. Should we stop the boats coming across the English Channel, in our case?
Let me work about how about if I just work on...
You sort this border out first.
Let me solve this problem.
It is. So here you are at Mar-a-Lago, magnificent place. You've got your family around you. You've had so many great things you've done in your life, you know, business, real estate, television. You've been the 45th president of the United States, and yet from day one, they made your life hell. The Russia hoax, a whole load of conspiracies, untruths. You know, I saw you during some of that going through it. They put you through impeachments, mainstream
two
media.
Two fake impeachments, Russia, which now turned out to be a total hoax.
Yep.
And everybody knows it. And they should take away the Pulitzer Prizes from writers that knowingly, in most cases, were writing about fiction. It was pure fiction.
Yeah.
Turned out that...
And Hunter Biden can do what he likes and no one cares. And we know all that. Why would a man who's got all the things that you've got...
Maybe your best question.
Why would a man who's got all the things you've got, great family, wonderful life, you're fit, you're looking fit, why on earth would he consider going back into that hell again?
So I love our country. I brought the country to a level it's never seen before. Then we had COVID come in, and then I brought it back, came up with vaccines that you're using, we're all using, the world is using, saved tens of millions of people throughout the world in less than 9 months. It was supposed to take 12 years. Just heard the other day, they were expecting it to take 12 years. And everyone said it wasn't going to work, and they work incredibly well. We've done an amazing job. If you love the country, you have no choice. It's not a question. It's just, this is a wonderful, beautiful life. But I like that too, because I was helping people. That's why I did it. And I think you'll be happy in the future too, because that'll be your next question, but you'll be happy in the future.
Well, I know you can't answer that question because it would start the campaign clock ticking.
Right.
But we've got the midterms coming up in less than a year. Are you going to be out on the campaign trail?
Yes, I will. I'll be helping a lot of people. We've been endorsing candidates. I'm 152-2. My endorsement, 152 wins and 2 losses. Okay. And those 2 losses were actually by people that were... The people that won were more Trump than I was, okay? So they won. But what happened is, what's happening is everybody, once the endorsements become very important, the most important and the most powerful endorsement that our country has seen. And so I have an obligation to make sure the right people get in. And we have many, many people online. Actually, when I leave here right now, I've got 4 candidates that won an endorsement. It's a very important job because we're going to have I think we're going to have a very big 22, and I think we're going to have an even bigger 24.
Donald Trump, thank you
you
for joining us on GB News.
Thank you very much.
There you go. That was Nigel Farage talking to the former US President Donald Trump. What did you make of that? Really keen to hear your views this morning. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet us at GBNews, and hopefully we'll get to some of those comments before the end of the programme. We're going to take a quick break, though. After the break, we're going to be dissecting some of the details about what Donald Trump had to say. Potentially, is he going to run in 2024? That and much more in just a couple of minutes. Stay tuned.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints over a drink we have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
A very welcome back to a special briefing, it must be said, on this Thursday morning. You've been watching, of course, Nigel Farage's interview with Donald Trump from Florida, in which they talked about everything from the Queen to Harry and Meghan to what happens, of course, on January 6th, and about whether he may well run again for the US presidency. Well, delighted to say that Greg Swenson, who is the chair of Republicans Overseas UK, joins me now in the studio to have a look back at what we heard and what you made of it. I mean, first of all, you know, a large part of the interview, particularly at the start, was Donald Trump repeating, frankly, what we know are false claims about how the election was rigged and how essentially he should have won. It clearly is still a big sore for Donald Trump, isn't it?
Sure, yeah, and you know, this is part of the President Trump ego, and I think it would have been better if he would not necessarily get past that, but just message it better. And there are a lot of reasons to believe there were problems with the election. So, but you don't have to call it, you know, the steal and it was stolen or I was robbed. How about there are some, you know, election irregularities that should be addressed? You know, the censorship, you know, for example, of the New York Post information about the Biden cartel in Russia, China, and Ukraine. Very important. And that's election integrity right there. So there's better ways to message it. I didn't think dwelling on it, you know, for 5 minutes. Many people agree with him. But again, there's probably a better way.
But kind of in a sense, America's moved on. I mean, he talked about how America was in a much worse state. I mean, is it though, frankly? I mean, it doesn't seem like that from afar. If anything, I suppose from our point of view sitting here is that we hear less about what's happening in the United States and we can only judge that no news is good news.
And that's very true, Darren. You know, before August with the debacle in Afghanistan and the inflation kicking in August, September, October, you know, before a lot of the self-inflicted wounds from the Biden administration, we didn't hear much about them in the UK. Now, of course, I follow it, so I knew that, you know, that his energy policy was a disaster. I knew that the border was a complete disaster, and that was completely self-inflicted. But it really didn't get across to the news here. And I mean, I was not getting phone calls back in the first 8 months of the Biden administration. It really started in August. Now I feel like I've been on every day. But, you know, look, it's a really difficult position or situation in the U.S. right now. It's night and day from the Trump days. Whether you like him or not, whether you like his message delivery or not, it's completely different. And it's amazing how fast it happened because, you know, this was only 9 months ago. It's the fastest drop in the polls for a sitting president in the first term in history. So, you know, here's Biden that came in as the unifier and the moderator, and he's done his best to wreck the place in a very short amount of time. It's amazing.
I mean, saying that his poll ratings aren't terribly good, you're right, but they're not massively different from where Donald Trump spent most of his presidency.
Of course, and that's because that was very unique to Trump. You know, and remember, you know, Reagan was polling in the mid-30s at this time in his presidency. So things can change, but this is particularly unique. You know, President Trump, for someone who had fantastic numbers in many metrics, never really busted out of the 40s in terms of his polling. So that, you know, I agree with that. But this is very different because remember, Biden was polling in the 50s not too long ago.
Interesting that almost certainly, I mean, certainly from a distance again, it seems pretty unlikely maybe that Joe Biden will run again.
Yes.
I think we concluded that is unlikely. How do you feel about Trump running in 2024? Because the feeling is that, yeah, he's clearly got a massive base. There's no doubt about that. but he's a very divisive character. And actually, if you get another, the whole point of Joe Biden's candidacy, the reason he won is because he did manage to unify people who just didn't like Donald Trump. They might not have liked Joe Biden, but they didn't like Donald Trump. And isn't that the fear for the Republican Party, is that the Democrats could simply do that again?
Yeah, true. And I think, my biggest fear about Trump running again is that he'd lose. If the election were tomorrow, he would win easily. He'd also win the Republican primaries easily if he chooses to run. So, even though it's still 3 years away, or the primaries are 2 years away, I'm in the camp of, if he runs, I would vote for him, but I would prefer it's someone else, for the reasons that you mentioned, Darren. I think, or if Trump could somehow dial it down a notch and reach out to people who don't support him. I think that's a challenge, Darren.
I think that's pretty unlikely.
Exactly.
Just let's focus on the international stuff, or more kind of his connection here. I mean, also, whatever his critics make of it, there is no doubt, I think, that he's an Anglophile, that he does like the UK. He's obviously got commercial interests here as well, but his mother's from Scotland. What did you make of that part of the interview in regards to that relationship with the UK?
Again, not surprised, because he's always had, an affection for the UK and the royal family, especially the Queen. So that doesn't surprise me. What I wish he got into a little was some of the policy issues. What's better for the special relationship? Cutting the military budget in the United States, the UK's most important strategic partner, stopping the production of energy. Again, the UK and the US are the strongest economic partners as well. Number one and number two in trade or foreign direct investment. These are important issues. The fact, and he did talk about natural gas. I thought that was great. But the fact that President Biden has cut the military, the fact that he has done his best to stop energy independence in the United States while begging Putin and OPEC to pump more natural gas and more oil. These are not good moments for the UK. As a very close partner of the U.S., both strategically and economically. So, that's something I wish he got more into the policy instead of it's all nice that he's got the relationship with the Queen. That's all great. But let's talk about natural gas and let's talk about the cuts in the military.
And just very finally, we're speaking to some of your colleagues earlier, kind of Republicans based here in the UK.
Sure.
And their just overall sense is, aside from whatever you make of Donald Trump's record and whatever he says, that in the end, America couldn't cope with another 4 years of his presidency. That he is just so divisive that America, the turmoil it would create would just be too much for the country.
I saw one of the earlier clips. Sarah's a great friend of mine. It's hard to disagree, and I think there is some Trump fatigue. But what you also have to understand, this is a Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan moment. It's even though Trump, it was a former president, so that's quite different. Reagan was the governor of California. He ran for president in 1976. So there's a lot of similarities. The country was in a very difficult spot back then. It's in a very similar position right now. I could probably beat Joe Biden right now, or whoever the Democrats put up there. So, yeah, is there Trump fatigue? Sure, but there's also a refreshing return. If we could return to the policies of Trump, perhaps with a different candidate, but if it has to be Trump, I think he'd win.
If there was one name, who would you back right now?
I'd say, the clear winner right now would be Ron DeSantis, just because he's absolutely crushed it in Florida on COVID and the economy.
Okay. Greg, really appreciate your thoughts.
Great to be here, Darren.
Greg Swenson there, joining us in studio. Thank you very much indeed for Republicans overseas, based here in the UK. OK, well, another issue, of course, that President Trump touched upon was wind power. It was a big topic in Nigel's interview, of course, accused our Prime Minister Boris Johnson of making a big mistake by backing green energy. Well, let's listen to what the former US president had to say.
Boris is wrong. If he's going heavy into wind, you're telling me, but if he's going heavy into wind, he's wrong. He's making.
Well, Malcolm Grinston is an energy expert and an honorary senior research fellow at the Centre for Energy Policy at Imperial College London, and joins us now. Very good morning to you. What did you make of what the president had to say? Clearly not a fan, it must be said, of wind or indeed renewable energy.
Yes, I don't think that came as a great surprise to anyone who's heard the former president speak before. In energy, as in everything in life, things are never as good as their massive enthusiasts say, or as bad as their huge detractors say. At this moment in the UK, we're getting about a third of our electricity from wind. If you'd gone back not too many decades, all of that would have been coming from coal with much worse environmental effects. There's no doubt at all that wind can play a significant role in low carbon energy futures, but there are two issues with it. Firstly, because there's not much energy in air moving about compared to a chemical fuel like coal or oil, or even more a nuclear fuel like uranium. You do need an awful lot of equipment, an awful lot of mining has to go on, an awful lot of unrecyclable minerals have to be used. So there are significant environmental issues, as well as the local environmental issues for bird life and wildlife and so on. And secondly, the wind doesn't necessarily come when we want it to come. At the moment, when we're using quite a lot of electricity in the UK, because it's daytime, having a lot of wind on the system is a great benefit. There are times when there isn't much wind around and we do need power. There are times when there's an awful lot of wind about and we don't need power. And frankly, electricity becomes a good of negative value. So the intermittency of wind, the unreliability of wind, is an issue that becomes greater and greater the more wind that you've got on the system. So President Trump raises some points that are worth considering, but I think goes far too far, just as those who believe we can do everything with renewables similarly raise some interesting points, but go far too far.
I suppose what I can't get, Malcolm, is as a businessman, as Donald Trump is fundamentally, we know this is an energy not just of the present, but of the future. It's where the money is going to. You know, it is going to, as you say, increasingly take up part of our energy supply, just like it is here in the UK. It's kind of like, 120, 30 years ago, people say, well, I'm not that interested in oil because we've got coal. Why not just do it even from a business point of view and recognise, you know what, we could make an awful lot of money from this. We could really innovate with all of this.
Well, it all comes down to the fact that we can't really store electricity in large quantities. And although there are interesting things going on with hydrogen and with batteries and with pumped storage, it looks vanishingly unlikely that we're going to have economic grid scale storage of electricity in the immediate future. Now, that means that each unit of electricity is not of the same value. If you've got coal or oil in a barrel, or you've got nuclear electricity, uranium, where you can store the stuff and use it when you want, then you can match supply and demand. We've seen some very interesting things in places like South Australia, which has a lot of wind at the moment, where for very long periods of time now, electricity is a good of negative value. Because if you have too much electricity on the system and your frequency and your voltage goes up, not terribly much, then electronic equipment can't take that, it begins to blow, and in the worst case, you can have so much electricity flowing through that it melts the wires and destroys the grid. Okay. So if you're producing something with negative value, it doesn't matter how cheaply you do it, you're going to then have to pay somebody else either to stop you from doing it or to take it away, and that's where the economics is very, very different from the past.
Okay, Malcolm, appreciate your thoughts on that and your analysis. That's Malcolm Crimson there, who is an energy expert. Okay, that is it from the briefing for today. Back again tomorrow. I'll have the full coverage of the by-election results. But up next, it is Patrick and Mercy with To The Point. Stay tuned.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Good morning. It's cold and frosty out there and icy in places as well. And overnight we've seen some sleet and snow that should be fading away over the next few hours. And for most it's going to be a fine and sunny day. But look at the isobars. Follow them all the way up to the north. That's where our air is coming from. That's why it is so cold out there. And these two little weather fronts have been providing more showers through the night and still providing a bit of sleet and snow for Wales, southwest England and down the eastern side of England as well, and across northeast Scotland. So, as I said, it could be quite icy out there this morning. Just bear that in mind. The showers do tend to fade as we go through the day. We'll keep one or two close to the east coast of England and northern Scotland, but for many it's a dry and bright day with quite a bit of sunshine. And those winds will be easing down, not as strong or as bitter as yesterday, but it's still going to be cold, 3 or 4 degrees at best for most of us. Quite quickly this evening, we'll see a frost reforming as the cold air sits in place, but then we start to see wet weather coming into Northern Ireland and across Scotland. Hitting the cold air, that could provide some snow to lower levels for a time across Scotland, but even also further south, Northern England, East Wales, the Midlands could see an hour or two of snow, and that works its way towards eastern England first thing in the morning. These are the minimum temperatures, but actually, as we go towards dawn, those temperatures will start to rise. So although we could see snow for a time, it'll soon turn back to rain. So it's mostly a wet start across the south. As I say, we could see a few flakes of snow across East Anglia and the southeast for a time tomorrow morning. But turning back quickly to rain, that area of rain clears, but it looks like we'll see further rain coming into the southwest as the day goes on. Quite a grey day then for England and Wales, but brighter skies further north tomorrow. Quite a bit of sunshine, just a few showers across the far northwest. Temperatures here 7-8 degrees, but in the south it's going to be milder again tomorrow. We're back up to double digits. Goodbye.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays.